Welcome back. Today we are going to get into my May top reads. I know it's a little late. However, I had some recording issues with this one, so I had to go back and redo the whole video. But I wanted you to have these books on your radar because I think they are great. So we're gonna kind of kick it right off with a contemporary one by Lark Taylor and Cora Rose called Covenant. I haven't read Cora Rose, but I do love Lark Taylor, so I thought that this was gonna be a great duo, and I was not wrong. This is kind of a second chance romance. You've got Wyatt and Matthias. They have known each other previously, so they were really good friends in childhood. And then through circumstances, we find out why Matthias kind of broke it off and no longer saw Wyatt after a certain point in time. Wyatt doesn't know about Matthias's background, so he has all this anger built up towards him. So let me back it up though. For the most part, this book is from Wyatt's POV. Now, Wyatt used to have a really successful career as a lawyer. He was making a bunch of money. He had a fiance. He was kind of on top of the world. His brother gets into an accident and he decides to spend all his time helping his brother get his life back on track, or try to, put him through rehab and all that other stuff that his brother needs to heal from this tragedy. That being said, that kind of messed up his personal life. So no longer engaged. The job, because he had to take so much time off for personal time, no longer there. No one's gonna hire him. For whatever reason, he's got this black stain on his reputation, so he's running out of funds, running low, and getting desperate. So this town has kind of like a fairy godmother behind the scenes called the Firm. Now there is a catch, that the firm will always take payment of some sort. You don't know what the payment's gonna be. You put your little wish on a piece of paper in this one particular place, and if they accept, you'll know, and then eventually they'll come in, and it's basically like an IOU. They come and then they want their payment in the form of whatever it could be. So he gets all this help through his wish with the firm. His payment is to marry the person of their choosing, and they have to be married for a year because this person's wish, we'll just call it a wish, was to get married for a year in order to receive his inheritance, or their inheritance. We don't know who it is, but it is an a romance book, so I just threw that out there. Now, turns out that this guy is Matthias. So through this 1 year that they have to be married, there's a lot of emotions that come up through this year that they're together. A lot of misunderstandings that are still highlighted, still running through Wyatt's head. And then slowly we get to see the layers peeled back, and we get to see Wyatt start to trust again. We get to see Matthias start to take stuff that he wants for himself, because on the other hand of it, we do see a slightly behind the scenes on Matthias's side, and his brothers, who are very fun characters in of themselves, are always like, you don't do enough for you work yourself too hard. So it's kind of a really, really well done. The plot always moves forward. These scenes, or I should say the chapters we see from Matthias' point of view, because we do get a few of them, are mostly showing the history between Matthias and Wyatt. So they're each one is kind of like a moment in their childhood as they grow older and together, and then finally we get to see what caused the big whole misunderstanding, the long absence. Honestly, it was kind of a little bit heartbreaking when we finally get there. So this was just a really well done read. I was gripped from the beginning to the end. The characters are fantastic. I want to see more of Matthias's brothers. I think they are characters that deserve their own stories. So I know it was supposed to kick off a new series called The Firm. I haven't heard anything more about a sequel, but it's always hard when authors work together, because I know schedules have to align and the stars need to, come into place. But I'm crossing my fingers that we get book 2. Staying with the contemporary theme, I've got another one from Con Riley, also kind of a second chance romance, if you will. Now, I love Con Riley. If you haven't picked up a Con Riley book, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. Her writing is just magical. There's something very lyrical about the way she puts words to a page. Very emotional, lots of depth to these characters who are usually going through a lot of healing during this story. So here we are back in Glen Harbor. I love Glen Harbor. This has a huge place in my heart. Luke, Charles, all of the teachers that we've come to know from this special place in Cornwall, who give children like a fighting chance. We have Isaac, who is also looking for his chance here to become the librarian. Isaac is a storyteller, but he needs this job because he wants to take his brother out of London. He's got a younger brother that he's taking care of. His mom is in jail. She's been arrested for some drug charges. There's a whole thing about going on through like the poverty and who gets charged and the cover-up, not cover-ups, but how the wealth disparity really puts the underclass and the impoverished in really terrible situations. So Isaac is really hoping for this chance to get his brother out of London, out of the school system that he's been in that is not the best. And then also there's also been some terrible incident that's happened near there, mostly related to gangs and violence. Now, on his trek to Glen Harbor, he takes a moment to just stop the car, take a little rest, and lo and behold, he sees Joe. Joe was the caseworker for his brother once his mom was taken in by the police. So that's kind of where the second chance comes from. They didn't really have an official relationship at the time in the past because Joe, professional, but he was developing feelings for Isaac. He saw how protective Isaac was of his brother. Isaac really trusted Joe to be there for him and his brother, to help them through this situation. And Joe ended up putting the case in someone else's hands because he didn't want to negatively impact any chances that Isaac would have of taking care of his brother. So there's a little bit of that. And so you get to see a lot of Joe working nice and patiently to like work back into Isaac's life. Isaac has all this anger and not resentment, but he's just a little broken and a little unsure of who to let back in. And you see him slowly start to thaw, start to trust Joe. And also Joe never feels like he is enough for his family. And so Isaac kind of gives him that space to feel wanted, to feel needed. And it's just a really moving story. I can't say enough good things about Con Riley. I like all of her stuff, some more than others, although really you can't go wrong, but this one really stuck to me. And I think if you're gonna start anywhere, you can start here, and then you go and read all the back list, because yeah, once you pick up one Con Riley, you're gonna want to read all the books that have come before, and you can really pick anyone up because they are, for the most part, all of Con Riley's books stand on their own. There are cameos and other things like that, and maybe slight references to other things. Like Joe is now working for another kid at Glen Harbor who is the brother of the main character from Wedding in a Week. So there's a little bit of tie-ins like that you just get from like a small town kind of atmosphere, but really they do stand on their own fairly well. But I love watching the intricacies of how the characters all know each other and how it all plays out. Fantastic. No longer contemporary. Moving on to some urban fantasy, because I love me some urban fantasy. We've got Witchwolf by Sam Burns and W.M. Fawkes. So this one's interesting because we start with Dakota, who is a Japanese American adoptee. Doesn't know anything about his birth family. He's just out of school. He's landed this job. He went to school for Japanese, has become a translator. He has been hired by this company to be there for negotiations while we're working through like a merging kind of situation with the company he's hired with and a Japanese company, just to make sure that company that hired him just wants to make sure everything's above board, that they're not trying to slip anything in, just to make sure that everybody is on like the same playing fields. But Dakota also wants to celebrate this new beginning, so he goes to a club and has a really good time with this guy who he thinks he'll never see again. Turns out when he goes to work the first day, it's the guy who owns the company he's now with. It's so good. Now, he doesn't know anything about the magical world. He thinks everyone's just normie, human. He thinks he's human. Jax is an alpha werewolf. I love how they do alphas here. He leads the pack. He makes sure the pack is protected. He makes sure the pack is taken care of first. Like, he puts their safety needs before his own. The way they describe alpha in this book, I think if everyone thought of alpha this way, we would use it in a much different term, and I appreciate it. Jax knows that Dakota is more than meets the eye, but now he realizes that Dakota doesn't know about the supernatural world. So there's a little bit of like, oh shit, we gotta like make sure this guy who thinks he's a regular human doesn't know. But then the situation changes. And I loved watching Dakota come into his own his history, own the power that he has inside him. I love the relationship as it grew between Jax and Dakota, the trust they put in each other. And I'm really hoping that we get more in this series. I don't know what the plan is. Right now, it kind of looks like it's a standalone, but there's a lot of side characters who I thought were fun, and I wouldn't mind seeing more from this universe by these two. So if you like urban fantasy with a little spice, this one would be a good pickup. There's a little bit of like, not betrayal, but there's a little bit of action. The plot is always moving forward. It was actually really fun. All right, now that we're on our urban fantasy kick, I listened to An Embrace to Hearten Me by Michele Notaro. I love the Magi accounts. This is the Magi accounts adjacent. You have to read the Magi accounts in order. And they're not spin-offs, they're like companion stories. That's what they are. Really, they go in between at certain times. So this is a companion story from Jude's point of view. So Jude and Mads are the main Magi in the Magi accounts. The Magi accounts follow Mads, and we get to see Jude, not from his POV, but a lot of him in that. So now we finally get to see Jude, his thoughts and feelings on everything as he starts to build this relationship with River and Kulani. So River and Kulani are two shifters that live in the Pride. Kulani like kind of has a crush on both River and Jude and doesn't know what to do with it. Jude was like, yeah, I have a crush on River and you. And then River's like, yeah, I want the three of us to like kind of figure things out. But like Jude is like, wait, what? I don't know how to deal with my feelings because I was basically imprisoned for too much of my childhood. Really sad. There's a lot of heartbreaking treatment of a lot of people in this. And then Kulani's like, he's like brains broken. Like, what? More than two partners? It's cute. But River, they are super sweet. They're adorable. They are like trying to push both Jude and Kulani in very soft manner to like open their minds to this possibility. But you do get the backstory of Kulani, which is kind of talking about heartbreaking and sad. This delves into that a little bit more. It kind of comes back into the overarching plot. I will say the one takeaway is I wish we learned a tiny bit more about River. They do say their history and how they came into the Pride, but I feel like the focus is more on Kulani's backstory, and then only because it ties into the larger Magi accounts story, where River's is kind of just personal to them. So that's kind of, I think, why River gets slightly shafted, but they're a sweetheart, and I'm glad that they finally were able to convince Jude and Kulani to like see the light. The narration is done very well. I believe it's Zachary Saba. I'd have to double check on that. But the narration is done very well. He brings the characters to life, does, the different voices, so you do know who's speaking when. Michele Notaro is another one. I like their stuff. The Magic accounts is by far my favorite that she has put out, and that's what I've got. Those were my top reads. As always, I'd love to know what you're reading. Please put that in the comments. Put your favorites, what you hated. If you have any reactions to what I've suggested, I'd be curious to see what you guys are reading. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, all the good things. That way you can keep seeing my content and I will keep putting out for you. All right. Until next time, take care. Thank you. Bye, guys. Bye.